Hello, everyone, and welcome to another one. Let's get on with it.
Yeah.
Why are men so afraid to approach women these days?
Me too.
Ooh,
Is it
TV,
that?
news, and things. It never seems that nothing bad is reported about a woman doing something, but it's always like, I mean, growing up, my mom was a police officer, so she would always, kind of, just from her own experience, she'd say, "Oh, you better lock the door because, a man could come in and
Stranger danger mindset.
yeah, and here's, as a young girl, I'm like, oh my gosh, man, scary. Me, like this little thing I need to protect. Like, so it may be just that conditioning maybe over time and yeah, but I've heard some interesting, crazy stories about women too, like doing things, but I'm like, man, why wasn't this on the news? Like, it needs to be equal proportion.
Well, I think like there's obviously the fear of rejection in there too. It's not just Me Too, right? Like
Oh, certainly.
men,
yeah.
there are a lot of
100%.
insecure men out there that really don't want to face the possibility of rejection, so they will never put themselves out there at all. But then again, on the other side, women need to learn how to reject men without being rude to them and having some grace about it. Like that's kind of a lost art, is rejecting
Yes.
someone
Yeah.
in a generous way.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, I think a lot of men have the experience of maybe they're a little shy or nervous, but they're not otherwise being creepy or a jerk or an asshole, and they'll approach a girl and it's like a fucking just a train wreck. And not some women will graciously reject a guy. Hey, oh, thank you very much. I have a boyfriend, whatever. But a lot of men will have the experience of going up to a girl and it's like, it can be pretty brutal, the ways in which men get rejected. Certainly in like a party type environment, if there's alcohol involved, even a guy who like in a very polite way goes up to a girl, like when alcohol's involved, people can be very obnoxious and brutal. And also with social media, you have like, men are also scared of like being like, they don't want to come off like a creep, not just in that moment, but then like if the girl goes and tells all her friends, oh, this guy came up to me and approached me, and I don't know. So
She could record you.
Yeah.
I think the other thing too is because of dating apps, like before it was, if you wanted to meet somebody, you had to approach them in person in some capacity. Otherwise you pretty much, like, there was no dating app. So
Grid one.
Okay, that's it. So, sorry for remaining silent, but I wanted for you to hear all the answers. And I have a question. Why do men are afraid of approaching women? And they gave a lot of explanations why. News, TV, because I don't know, it was called a stranger danger mindset. I don't know whatever that was, but I guess people are. The answer is fear, right? Because of what happens in the news, then men fear approaching women. Okay, let's call it number one. Number two would be insecurity, that men are insecure. That's another explanation. Third, it's rejection, right? Men have the wrong experience because women have to learn how to reject in generous way, right? And so men are rejected in the wrong way. That makes men less likely to have a second try. Fourth, men are shy and nervous. Fifth, lack of experience. And sixth, dating apps. So there are, let's count. 1, 2, 3 points that refer to men. Sorry, yeah, 3 points that refer to men. Well, the TV and news is kind of a neutral, but it still refers to men because it talks about fear, that men fear approaching women. So, okay, let's add it. So it's 4 things that involve men, that it's men's fault. Dating apps, it's a neutral one, and one is regarding women. Women that about the learning to reject men, right? So basically, according to the panel, it is mostly men's fault. And what's your opinion then? Are they right? Okay, first of all, I think they are right. Yes, it falls on men. We are the people that, we are the men that approach women, right? So we make the first move. And if the move is not made, then you can't blame the women, right? Well, the rejection argument, I guess that women can be rude, etc. So there's no point in doing it again, learning from experience, right? Yeah, maybe. But come on, still, right? You can't judge all women based on one experience that you had. So let's assume that the panel is right and it is on men. Who was right? Which which answer is actually the disease and which answer is the symptom? TV, what happens in TV news makes men less likely to approach women. Insecurity, shy and nervous, lack of experience. Which one is it? Because all of those are good points. But which one, if there is a disease, which one is it? Well, if you have an open mind, then you would notice that that question, the question that I asked, is wrong. Because I pointed you to those answers. There are two more answers that an open-minded person should think about. What if all of those answers are equally true? And what if all of those answers are wrong? It does fall on men to make the first move. My theory about this is the lack of masculinity. Masculinity solves all of these problems: insecurity, fear, shy, nervous, and lack of experience. If you are masculine, well, then sure, whatever will happen to you will happen to you. Who cares? Let's just do it. Why not? Let's try. Don't think about the consequences. Just be brave and do what you gotta do. That's right, being masculine. I think it is, at least. And the lack of masculinity is something that I wanted to address. Because, again, what is the symptoms and what is the disease? I will ask the question again. Is lack of masculinity a symptom or a disease? Well, it seems like it's a symptom because like the lack of masculinity is now an issue. It wasn't an issue before, so something changed that tipped the scale. Well, then that something is the disease, right? So what is it? Well, let's try to analyze. What teaches masculinity? Well, it should be like parents, I guess, but also experience. Despite whatever wants to say, we are still animals, and there are still laws of nature. Meaning, those men that can't handle being a man die off. And those men that can handle being a man reproduce. Still, laws of nature apply. Now, why so many men have issue with lack of masculinity? Guys, what do you think? Give it a second and think about it. My answer would be feminism. Strange, right? How? You can be a feminist without making any actions at the expense of men. Yeah, you can. But there are plenty where you can. Let's take job for an example. Let's take a job for an example. There is a limited amount of jobs, and there are masculine jobs and there are feminine jobs. There are jobs that teach women how to be feminine, and there are jobs that teach men how to be masculine. Right? If a guy is working a job and he can't handle it, well, laws of nature will apply. Sorry, that's just life. I'm very sorry. It's not fair, but that's how it is. Same applies to women. Now, if a job teaches either masculinity or femininity, then what would happen is in a situation when there are more people that need a job than there are available jobs? Well, some people will not get that experience. What does feminism pushes for? Equality, right? So 50-50% in bricklayers, 50-50% in brain surgeons, 50-50% everywhere. But there are jobs that teach masculinity, and there are jobs that teach femininity. For example, let's take a bricklayer. Let's say there's like 80%, 90% of people that are bricklayers, they're men. Okay, fair enough. Masculinity comes in and changes, tips the scale. Right? And now there's 50% of men that are bricklayers. Assuming that job teaches masculinity, that means those 40% of men lost the ability to learn masculinity. And 40% of women 40% of women have now an opportunity to learn how to be masculine. Right? There's like 1,000 jobs and 2,000 people. And out of those 2,000 people, 1,000 people are men and 1,000 people are women. So if you take 500 from men, 500 from women, that makes 50-50. Then 500 men will have a chance to learn masculinity, and 500 women will have a chance to learn masculinity. Before, it was 90% of men, right? So 900 men would have a chance to learn masculinity. You can do things as a feminist without men's expense. But there are things that are at men's expense. So these women are not getting it, but if you are like pushing this agenda of 50-50 everywhere, that you might be causing the masculinity issue, lack of masculinity issue. There are other things that teach masculinity, of course. First thing that comes into mind, first, your parents need to prepare you for your life. Yeah, sure. And there are basically some men that will never learn masculinity. They're just not masculine. The end. They can't change. Or maybe even worse. Their scale would be tipped to the feminine side even more. And for some men, that's perfectly good. I hope it works, right? There are so many people and so many options. Like, that's what I don't like about Red Pill. Red Pill globalizes everything, right? There's most and most and most. What is most, right? Most can be 15% of people. Most can be 70% of people. Most can be 50% of people, right? You could say, what is the most, an example. Yeah, so let's stick to the jobs. Which profession hires mostly? Like, what is the profession that hires the most amount of people, right? Then you would have, like, there's this profession that has like 10%, this profession 9%, this profession 6%, this profession another 6%, this profession 3%, and you eventually adding those small numbers, you would, after summarizing all of it, you would get 100% of jobs. But the most is 10%. That's how I view people, right? There's people that like this, and that's 10% of people. There's people that like this, and that's like 6% of people. And there's people that like this, that's 20% of people. And it's like a combination. You can call it, I guess, an array. Or a spectrum, call it a spectrum. But getting back to the masculinity thing, I think no one actually thought about all of this. Like, there wasn't a single person that, when the feminism started, they didn't sit down and thought, hey, what are the real consequences of what we're doing? Right? And like sit down in like a group with 6 women, think about that would result in this. Is that good or bad? And what's the proper approach then? And that would result in this. And like, think about not men or women, but the future together. And quite frankly, feminism and the, I don't know how exactly those groups are called that speak for men. I don't like that approach of dividing into women and men. There should be a group that like thinks about both sides. The future that is in front of us is together, not separated. So you can still fight for men's rights when you're in that group, and you can still fight for women's rights if you're in that group, right? Anyways, I went too far with all of this. So that is my theory. I'm not saying... I had a discussion recently about feminism, And I thought to myself, is feminism actually good or wrong? And there's plenty of things. You know what? Maybe I'll make a maybe I'll make another episode about this. Is feminism actually good or bad? Because I don't know. I don't like to assign good or bad, actually. I think people that. I think feminists have, even those unhinged ones, they're like, in England, I saw an interview with a feminist from England. She spoke that, well, the feminism movement was funded by like all those women that were hurt by men, so it was against men from the start. Something like that. Even those women that are hurt by men, their goal is to not be hurt. Of course, at expense of men. They don't think that far. What is the result of their actions? But in their hearts, they think, they're fighting for a good thing. So even those strange feminists that are hurt, they think they're doing the right thing. Of course, they can be wrong, but they are still acting out of the goodness of their hearts in a strange way. So I don't like to assign good or bad. I can't judge actions, right? But I won't assign if that person is good or bad. I can't say if someone is wrong or right. So maybe I'll make another episode about feminism, etc. I don't know if feminism is good or bad. I don't know. There are plenty of feminists, I bet. Is feminism actually the thing that media, that we can learn from, like, RP and I guess podcasters, etc.? Is feminism really has gone too far and has been corrupted? Maybe the real feminists that could be actually 60% or have the majority just don't have they're not being heard. But they still would be the majority, so that would be what feminism is, right? But if there is a small minority that is louder, I don't know. Anyways, I think this falls on feminism. While you can be a feminist and not affect men, you can also be a feminist and affect men. And this is an action that affected men. If you are fighting for 50-50 everywhere, have you ever actually thought about consequences of that? Because I think this, which means like lack of masculinity, is a consequence of that. And if you are a woman, as a woman, do you really want to live in a world where there are no masculine men, which means men don't approach you, that men don't fight for you? Men are too scared, too weak. Do you want to live in that world? That's up to you. Have a good one, guys. Cheers and bye bye.